Is it possible to fully heal from violence? The journey is a spiral and it takes many forms. You have to take it one step at a time. Listen, this is Anne Marie, host of About This Life. About This Life is a podcast, a show that has us talking about our belief system, about who we are and why we believe what we do. Because somewhere along the line, we might have a mindset shift. We might change our beliefs because they no longer serve us. It is how we evolve, how we grow. The quote that I just said to you, I took it from my guest today, Miss Kelly Watt. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Hi, Anne Marie. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it is my pleasure to have you on the show. Believe me, trust. Okay. So let me say, tell our viewers, tell our listeners some things about you. So this is your flowers in terms of flattery. Poet, novelist, nonfiction writer, spiritual seeker. That's one of my favorites. Spiritual seeker. You've been at a Buddhist monastery in Nepal. You spent that back maybe a minute ago. We want to say a minute ago, a while back. Yoga instructor, tapping instructor. I actually know what that is. You have had three pilgrimages, if I say it plural. And let me go ahead and introduce some of the books that you've written. Okay. You've written three. Mad Dog, a Gothic novel. Camino Meditations. I think Camino's in Spain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As well as The Weeping Tree, How Astrology Saved Me from Suicide. Oh my goodness. How much time do we have to get into all these questions? Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Anne Marie. And I will just correct you on one thing. It's the weeping degree.
The Weeping
And
Degree.
yeah, so we
Okay.
only have to speak about one book. So there you go. We can talk about whatever. And also, I think, you're very open and flowing. You like to go with the flow, I think. So you can always just trust that, I think.
Yes, I like to go with the flow. I'd like to begin with this word because you are a wordsmith. I am a wordsmith, and I appreciate that. Alchemist. An
Hmm.
alchemist. Who or what is an alchemist? What purpose do they serve?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Oh my goodness. It's interesting because there are all these scams on the internet. Of course, I've got to tell you a story. And a lot of my writer friends are getting approached by these people who are using AI to lure them in, and they pretend marketers and not actual real marketers. And of course, they offer to do your marketing for your book for you, which is every writer's dream.
Yeah.
That somebody will help them with that. And so they searched the internet for all kinds of information about your book, and one of them approached me and they described my book as the alchemy of survival through the stars. I was like, that's pretty brilliant, actually. I was pretty impressed. So alchemy is I won't remember the exact historical definition, but it
Hmm.
is the turning lead into gold. It's the process of taking that which is rudimentary or raw and transforming it into something wonderful. And it's a theme in my latest book, The Weeping Degree, which is about um, healing through time, or the her story of a trauma and how it transforms through time and through healing. You need both elements, from a wound to a gift, and that's the theme of the book. So yes, it does have a certain alchemy, and
Yes.
alchemy is a kind of theme in it, and I do believe very much in that as a possibility in life.
How
Yeah.
do you transmute a theme into a gift? And I said the question wrong. How do you transmute a wound into a gift? I mean, the wounds can be pretty serious. So take us from where you started and how do we get to a place where it is a gift?
Yeah, that's the million dollar question, isn't it? That's, I think, what we're all here doing. Um, Well, it's probably easiest to talk about it in terms of the book. The book is written in three parts. The first part is called A Home for Little Girls, and the second part is called The Buddha and the Pink Futon, and the third part is called Hands Across the World. So the beginning is about the trauma, the middle part is about the search to heal the trauma, and the geographical cure, and the third part is about community or coming together with other people. So I think it depends on the wound, but I do believe that any
Mhm.
form of violence in the world, we live in a world that is full of violence, all different kinds of violence. I do believe that violence can be transformed. You can never be who you were before the violence. So, there's no easy answer to that. I don't think you can ever be innocent once you've had experience. You can never go back to who you might have been or who you were. But I think that with the right conditions, and sometimes we don't have all the right conditions in this life, but with the right conditions and the right information and support, we can transform many of those things. And I think the last couple of generations, last couple of decades have really been about finding, particularly in the women's movement, finding ways to create new healing modalities that transform. Women didn't really have the option of justice. There was no justice for people of color. There was no justice for, women. And so they had to find other ways to heal these traumas. And I think that's why there's been such a fantastic flourishing of all these different modalities. For myself, I went on a long journey. I was actually writing that down because I was listening to one of your other interviews, and I thought I should list them. I should actually list. I think one of your guests was saying, have a list for self-care. And I thought, oh, that's so
Yes.
brilliant, right? Isn't that brilliant? I mean, we all need that. I want to tack that up on my bulletin board so I can remind myself. But yeah, there were a list of them. And I think for me, the first thing was reading, being taught to read and being introduced to the world of books was profound for me as a little girl. And oddly, I learned that in the home that I lived in where I was abused. But that was a doorway. It's like one door closes and a window opens. That was the window that opened. And reading, for me, we identify, or I identify, I think everyone identifies with the characters that we're reading about. And they tell us about how to feel and other ways of being and places to go. And, it just opened up a whole world for me, reading. And then eventually writing. And then I would say meditation. I ended out in a Buddhist monastery in Nepal. I did my last year of
Yeah.
high school in India.
So you have a lot of modalities, but I need to unpack some of the things that you were
Sure,
sharing with us,
sure.
uh, because you mentioned being a little girl and the wound was assault,
Mhm.
and mentioned living in a home. So was this a home with your core family, or was it,
My mother,
your,
no, my mother was a single mother in the 60s. And at that time, she had to lie about being divorced to get a job. So that's how much things have changed. We forget,
oh my
sometimes.
goodness.
I'm dating myself, but you really see how much it's good to remember that things have changed. And that helps me because it's because there were many times in my life where I thought things are not changing fast enough, but
Hmm.
they do change over time, as people resist. So, yeah, so I was in several boarding situations. I was unofficially in foster care for a period of time. I was never officially put in foster care. I lived with my mother on the weekends and I was away during the week. So we had a weekend relationship. I only lived with her for about 6 years of my life. So in that time, which took place from when I was 2 till when I was around 11 or 12 years old, I was exposed to many violent criminal personalities. I
Yes.
was basically, targeted and picked on, which, what predators do, right? They pick on children who are vulnerable.
And as a child, did you escape with reading? Did you use that as a tool to escape your reality? Is that
Yeah.
where that love came from?
That's a really good question. I hadn't thought of that, but that was very much the case. I remember even when I got to high school being so I was shy in those days, very anxious to be at school with all of these people. And I would walk through the halls with a book, just kind of like I just lived in this kind of fantasy world. And when I got into psychotherapy, I had to learn not to do that, to actually face reality in some ways, not to just constantly disappear into something else. But yeah, books were definitely a source of learning, a source of escape, a source of hope, and also a source of comfort. Mhm.
Absolutely. And you started to list a lot of modalities in terms of the things we can try, and it's good to tack it up, right? And we can say, okay, I'm feeling this way. Let me pick this one for today.
And
And
the other thing that I discovered too in working on the book is that, at every different point of time in life, different ones were important. And that's why I realized it is kind of a spiral, and it's unfair to expect yourself to be doing, Z when you're really working on P, when the
Mhm.
alphabet, that it's natural to go step by step, I think, and to find different things resonate with you at a different time. So yeah, I was in psychotherapy for a long time and women's spirituality, and then eventually did some training. And I'm have a meditation teacher training and also EFT mentorship. So those are the two other things that I do. But mostly I write full time, and writing is healing for me, and also it feels like it's spreading healing in many ways too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do you have something you can share with us? Do you have a poem that you can share with us?
I
And then
do. I
we'll
have.
go ahead because we would love to hear it. And also, I want to get back to this title, The Weeping Degree.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Lots of
And
questions
that's
about
only part of the title.
that. That's only, yeah, that's true. That's only part. Okay, this is a poem called Private Burial. Here, I'll try to fold it up a little bit so I'm not getting as much.
Mhm.
First, the funeral. You make mini caskets out of Glenfiddich boxes. Old tin contraptions, once used for holding pencils, make excellent doll coffins. Tip out the pens. Paint them black and blue, collage and glue magazine cuttings all over them, Egyptian burial style. Provide everything a dead girl will need in the afterlife: a good dog, a hairbrush, a small pony and sword, cookies galore.
Mhm.
Sunsets, graveyards, and purple nail polish. You find an old Barbie at Value Village with platinum hair who looks nothing like Cheryl at 6 years old, but she will do. You paint her blue eyes black, dab her plastic doll knees with mercurochrome, pencil heart on cheek, give her ripped black tights, punk wardrobe, silver sprinkles and prayers. You place her carefully in her white tissue paper bower, close the lid with scotch tape, tie a knot with pink ribbon. Place the makeshift bower in a little hole in the forest under an old maple. It's not the only one. The forest is littered with these mock burial mounds with buried miniature sarcophagi for all the things you have lost to violence: friends, family, fortune, future, your sense of self. These effigies are all doll-sized, a child's funeral, teddy bear picnic gone wrong. You bury this one by the light of a full moon, struck match, sulfur stench, candle witness, the breeze applauds in the branches. Cover her with earth and pine cones and best wishes. Sing the funeral dirge. Say goodbye and whisper a word of gratitude or two.
Mm.
May the next life be joyous. May all your enemies burn with regret. Tears anoint your fingers for the lives of all the other ruined children, the ones less fortunate than yourself. You grieve the life you might have had you never been, you know. You wait until
Yeah.
the sadness is covered over with winter snow. Pray for the daffodils to return come spring
Mhm.
and run rampant over the ground with their crazy yellow hope.
Crazy yellow. Oh, thank
Mm,
you.
thank you.
And I miss all of that imagery and all of the things that you said in that writing, in that poem. One of many lines that stood out to me was ruined children.
Yeah. Thank you.
The feeling that possibly your life is ruined because of what someone else has done to you and
Mm.
inflicted upon you.
Mhm.
And so going back to the alchemy, it's being able to take that lead to gold, take that grief to gold. My
Mhm.
question to you, Kelly, is how do you decide what's sacred enough or true enough to put on a page, especially when you're talking about trauma? How do
Mm.
you decide what's sacred? How do you decide what's true enough to put it on a page when you're talking about such trauma?
Hmm. Well, that's a great question, and it's a process question in some ways too, isn't it? I wrote this book during the pandemic, and it's funny because I had that title, The Weeping Degree, for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to write a book about healing, but I couldn't really find the form for it. I tried writing it in nonfiction, I tried writing it in all these different ways, and I just didn't make any progress. And then during the pandemic, everything stopped, of course, as it did for so many
Yes.
people. And I had projects that were all on hold. And
Mm-hmm.
I started working with a poetry teacher named Judith Hill, and she had a class called Manuscript Clan. And I said, Judith, it was in fact my friend, the astrologer, who said to me, Kelly, if you were to turn your hand to poetry at this time in your life, I think you would find it would really flow. And I thought, oh gosh, I don't know. I think I'm something new. It's like, do I believe him or not? I really didn't know. So, but I thought, well, maybe I should, take his advice. And so I called Judith, and she said, well, we're doing Manuscript Clan, and everybody's bringing their poems together and publishing them. And I said, Judith, I don't have any poems, but I have this idea. And she said, just come, just do it.
Uh-huh.
And basically, she created a kind of community where I think we all felt safe to share what was deepest in our hearts. And I think the book was somewhat born of the alchemy of that time where we were watching so many people die. And I think in many ways I'd felt afraid to write about that which is deeply painful.
Mm-hmm.
And it became clear, well, it's now or never. Life does not
Mm-hmm.
continue endlessly. And look at all the suffering people are going through. So maybe now is the time to commit, and having that structure of having to produce a poem every week, having a group of people, a safe and supportive group of people to share them with, made it possible. So how do you decide when something is sacred enough? I think that you decide that in the editing, what to keep and what not to keep. But what most of teaching writing is, I think, and it's funny because I've started to teach, a lot of the pieces I write are little flash stories. Like that was a little flash story.
Right.
Um, Prose poetry is anyway. In teaching that, I teach a course about that called Finding Your Epiphany in Flash Fiction. It's mostly about creating an environment where and prompts and a situation that allows people to just trust their own inner voice and to just go with
Mm-hmm.
their heart, their raw heart. And the more you go with your gut and your raw heart, the more profound it tends to be, the deeper and truer to you it tends to be. So I think a lot of times what we're doing is getting rid of all the filters, all the things that
Yes.
prevent us from doing that. Wouldn't you say that? You're an English
I
teacher,
would
so
agree with that. It is your heart remembering who you are,
yeah.
because the filters that we wear are there to protect us. That's how they got
Oh,
there. We wear a mask because we do not want to be vulnerable. We
yeah.
learn as we grow up. Not everyone is a wonderful person. And we
No.
wear a mask, and then sometimes we get disconnected from ourselves and we forget who we are. So your friend was right in directing you towards that, because that brings you back to yourself. You can't hide in poetry.
And I think the brevity and the emphasis on language and if you take away a lot of the we weren't writing really strict formal types of poetry, more free verse. So there was room to explore with that. And I think that's why poetry always feels so sacred in a way. It's like it's close to
Mhm.
music, and music is always about the heart, I think. It's always about emotion. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I feel really blessed to kind of discover poetry later on in life in a way.
Yes. And the other thing about, as you say, music is one of those universal things that always bring people together.
It's
No matter
true.
your language, no matter what you speak, you can, you're speaking one language, somebody's another. All you have to do is play music, and
So
music brings us together. You're the weeping, okay? So I keep getting that title.
the
Let
tree,
me get
that's
it.
interesting. The weeping tree.
Because there's an actual book called The Weeping Tree. Maybe that's why.
Oh, there you
The-
go.
so the weeping degree, but that's just the first half of the title. You've got how astrology saved me from suicide. Do tell, spill the tea.
There was a lot of discussion about that subtitle, I have to tell you. Yeah. So the first part of the title, the weeping degree, is actually an astrological term. And when in every avenue in life there has its own language. The financial
Mhm.
world has its own language, teaching has its own language. And I always love those little kind of mini uh dialects that you learn when you learn about something. And in astrology, there's all kinds of great stuff that comes from, the Greeks and the Romans and little stories. And so the
Mhm.
weeping degree refers to, when you look at an astrological chart, it's a pie plate, and it's divided into different sections. And each little section, little piece of the pie, is ruled by a house, and the house has 1 to 30 degrees, and the 1 being the beginning of that house and 30 being the end. And the weeping degree is between the 28th and 30th degree. And what it stands
Mm.
for is it's the time when things fall apart. It's the time
Oh.
going into the birth canal before something new is born. And that's the good part to remember, that at the end of that process, something wonderful and new is born. But at the time, it can be very painful because it means the
Mhm.
letting go of everything else. And yeah, I mean, we kind of feel like we're in one now, don't we? In the world in some.
Yes. Well,
So,
thank you for that. Thank you for educating me. And I think that's part of why I was making the errors with the title, because I'm envisioning a tree. That was my image that I came up with, but I had no idea in terms of the astrology part of it and the different quadrants, as you just explained. How did astrology save your life?
so that was the subtitle, and we put it in, took it out, put it in, take it out, took it out. But at a certain point in my life, when I was in psychotherapy and really going through a lot of depression and
Hmm.
suicidality, kind of reliving a lot of my early pain, I was losing hope, and I went to see an astrologer. And what was great about that is he looked at my chart and he didn't say, "Oh, this is great, you're going to be fine." He didn't say anything
Hmm.
like that, but he addressed what he saw there. And he said that this is a very difficult chart. Early, you will have happiness later in life.
Okay. There's
And
hope. There's hope.
but yes, but here's the thing. He said, if you embrace the challenges you've been given, you have the story of Persephone being kind of kidnapped and abducted into the underworld and emerging. If you embrace this healing journey and take it on, it will give you gifts and rewards at the end
Mm.
of your life that you can't imagine of now. And I get a rush as I say that. Was it was profound for me on several levels. One, somebody was telling me the honest truth that, what was happening to me was terrible, which really helped at that time because people didn't really believe that
Yes.
adults did horrible things to children. And the other part of it was that there was some kind of divine order in the universe, is what he was sort of saying, and that there were steps to overcome, and that it was going to take time. And
Mm.
that was very helpful for me to know. So I knew then, okay, I'm in some kind of a process that I need to just embrace. And so I can stop feeling like I'm ruined forever, which is often
Right.
how people feel, the ruined children. They're ruined forever. They can never be the same. They can never be whole. No, not true. It's not true. And also that, I had to find my own way, my own journey through this. You had to go through it. I couldn't go around it. I couldn't pretend it wasn't there. I couldn't bemoan the life I might have had. None of that was going to help me. I had to just go through the healing journey. That was my destiny, as it was. That was what I was here to
So
do.
stop running from it,
Yeah,
deal with it,
yeah.
and then you come through on the other side. That's
Not
the
easy,
gist of
right?
it.
Just to say to
Yeah.
people sometimes, right? Or to hear, but it really helped me. It helped me enormously. And so from then on, I became kind of interested in astrology, not sun sign astrology, but their astrologies are quite specific. And they will often say things. Anyway, they seem to see a divine order at work, even if we can't see it in the present. And if often it feels like we're slipping backwards, I think it's humanity that slips us backwards, not the divine. But anyway, so that's where the
Yeah.
title came from. It really truly did help me at that very despairing suicidal moment. And and it
And you,
sparked a
you
lifelong fascination with such things.
Was that what led you on a journey to take a pilgrimage? Which is much different because, every now and then we go in our everyday lives, I just need to get away from the daily grind, of work and the rhythm, and you just need a change of scenery. But to take a pilgrimage is a whole different part. And how long was the pilgrimage? Was it a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months? Do tell.
Yeah, that's a funny thing. I'm glad you asked about that because I don't write about that in the Weeping Degree, but I did write about it in Camino Meditations. And what happened is I was in the car with my husband. I used to sell books, travel around Ontario selling books, and I became fascinated with audiobooks. I don't know if you, as an English teacher, you might like those too. I mean, I just love them because I often had to travel long distances and had to take up the time in the car, not go mad. And I was listening to Shirley MacLaine's. I knew nothing about it, and it was
Mhm.
Shirley MacLaine's book about walking the Camino in Spain. And I just really admired her. Well, she was very outspoken about things that were not very popular at that time. And I didn't know even what I felt about some of her beliefs. But as soon as I heard her voice describing this journey, I said to my husband in the car, I'm going to do that one day.
Yes.
And we need to do that. I don't know why I said
Yes.
it. I just
Yes.
knew I had to do it. And I did it as a test to try to become sober. So I walked for 7 weeks and I gave up alcohol for the duration of the walk. And that was the beginning of abstinence for me. So it was a profound experience. And I walked in silence in the mornings and meditated in the mornings and then just had fun in the afternoons. And it was such a
Hmm.
great, it remains one of the highlights of my life, I have to say. 7 weeks. I ended up attracting all these other people. I
Yes.
called them my turtle tribe. They were all the other meditators because that's like attracts like. You start talking to people, and so here we were all together, meditators. We were the
Hmm.
slowest people on the Camino. We took every diversion. If we could sleep in the afternoon, we did. Like we just did the opposite because, to get out of the hustle and stress of your life, to have that period of time, I was determined to enjoy it. And the Camino is a wonderful thing because, everyone is the same. We're all in our dirty hiking clothes. We all have sticks. We all have to find something to eat and someplace to sleep at night. It's a level playing field. And you're also out there outside all day. And I found that people really, if you walked with someone long enough, they would share with you, their
Yes.
sorrows, the things they've went through in life. It's so human. It was very moving to meet
Hmm.
people at that level.
So
How
how
about
does that differ from your other two? Because you've been in Nepal, and where's the third location where you were?
um
Mexico, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
Mexico. Um, I did one in India. When I went back to India,
okay.
I had Lyme disease, and so I went, but it was a driving thing. It wasn't walking. We went to different sites, religious sites,
Mhm.
and then one in Mexico, which was to oh, I'm going to forget the name of it. Los Lagos,
Hmm.
La Virgen de los Lagos. It's the
Okay.
second, third largest pilgrimage in Mexico. And that was also absolutely amazing. I walked with three women, or three, oh, I guess there were more of us than that. A group of women who volunteer, they're midwives, and they volunteer for, I think, an organization for unwed mothers in
Hmm.
San Miguel de Allende. And we walked for, oh gosh, how long was that? 7 days, 7 days or something. And it was grueling. Oh my gosh, it was really tough.
Yes.
And we had a lot of help. And the Mexicans were so incredibly tough, and they were so sweet to us, because the gringos usually come and they walk for one day. And I remember one night we had to walk through the city of Leon at night, trudging on the cement, with our feet. And I felt like Frankenstein when I got to the end. I mean, I could hardly move. And as we came walking in, they all started clapping because we made it. And because we were with them, we stayed with them. And it was also like a culturally amazing experience, because I felt like I was really immersed in Mexican culture. And I'm a big fan of Mexico. I really like Mexican people and Mexican food. And so
Hmm.
it was also really, really moving, very moving experience. And at the end, you go into when you get to see the Virgin in her little shrine, and there's a wall, a healing wall, where people have put up all their letters, praying for help.
Yes.
And oh, I mean, it had me in tears, really. There's crutches, there's wheelchairs, there's, really incredible, um, yeah, moments of faith, right? Incredible
It
moments.
is because when you embark upon a walk, you discover things about yourself that you don't know going in. And I'll share with you my walking
Oh,
story.
yes. Tell me.
Uh,
I'd love to hear what people have done. Yeah.
because there was a commemorative walk. Linda Harris is someone who leads all of these walks, and it's in tribute to Harriet Tubman and
Oh,
her
excellent.
quest for freedom and everything that Harriet Tubman did back in the day. So Linda leads these walks, and one of them is we traveled out of state, our group members did, and it was to recreate the 50-mile journey from Selma to Montgomery. So in the 1960s, that civil rights walk that happened with
Yes, the
John
famous
Lewis
walk.
and
Yes.
King and so on and so forth. And so a few years ago, I want to say it was around COVID. I don't remember if it was before or after at this point. I think it was after. She had a walk, but here's the thing. I had had knee replacement surgery.
Oh, no. Oh,
And
that
so,
sounds tough.
Anne Marie, 4 months, it's been a few months since I had the surgery. Will be fine. Oh my God.
No, no, it's tough. It's really tough on your body.
It was like 50 miles in 4 days because we averaged 15 to 17 miles each day.
That's a lot.
And I was able to walk 2 of those days. I did not do all of the days. And I remember it because by the time I was done, I was like, "Oh." But the point of the matter is when you walk like that, we also took in the community. And by that, I mean we visited the churches, like where Dr. King spoke. We
Lovely.
saw the commemorative wall. Where there were freedom fighters, and we learned the history of the community and why that place, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, was so important as a landmark in terms of civil rights history.
Mm.
So you get more than you ever anticipate when you go on these quests, on these journeys. And
Yes, and how moving that would be, right? It must have been very moving.
it was very moving, and there's a camaraderie that you start with the people who are walking with you, and you
Yes.
learn each other's stories. And that is when you're able to see humanity in one another. Um, it's just uh, it's just very moving. It's
Yeah, it gets
very
very
moving.
real, right? All the
Yes.
chit chat and all the kind of superficial stuff that we often have to deal with, I find falls away on those things, partly because you're in pain all the time.
Probably
Maybe.
because you're in pain, and then there's the laughter that occurs.
Yeah.
It was just a very moving experience. I want to go back to writing.
Mhm.
Okay. Have you been able to forgive those people who hurt you when you were younger?
That's such a good question.
Have you thought about them?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Obsessed, obsessed. I was obsessed for many, many years. And I think that my obsessive nature was both what do you call a impediment and also a gift too, in a way,
Mhm.
because I became relentless. And at one point, um, later on, I did this is actually a recovery suggestion where I prayed for them for 30 days. And I've had several bouts of that. If I found myself obsessing again, there were a lot of impediments to my getting justice and to sorting out who was who. And, that didn't really seem like an option for me. And so I had to find some way to let it go. And then
Yeah.
one of the best things I did actually was to forgive myself. And that was the
Mm.
hardest thing. You would think a child wouldn't, I was a victim as a child, of course, but a part of me did not forgive myself because I was blamed a lot as a kid. That was part of that's often what predators do. Well, they will blame, it's like, wife beaters will do that. Oh, it's all your fault. If
Yes.
you didn't nag me, if you
Yes.
didn't do this, I would never do that. Bullies often use that tactic. It's very
Hmm.
common. And so I had internalized some of that. And one of the most healing things I did was to write a letter to that 11-year-old child, saying that I was just so sorry for what she had been through, and that I would do my best to protect her for the rest of my life, and we would not be exposed to people like that. And it was just a long, very personal, private letter. And
Yes.
I would read that, once a week to myself so that I could remember that I didn't need to blame myself or feel that somehow, I was one of the ruined children or bad in some way or, doomed, you know.
Yes. Yes. That you were there. Can you
And the
bless
more
us
I
with
could
another?
do, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, can you bless us with another poem?
Oh, okay, yeah. I was just going to say that the more I forgave myself, the easier it got
Hmm.
to see them. I did research them and discover that, they had very sick lives. They had very traumatized lives too. I'd like to read just a section of a poem. I won't go too long. Just a
Okay.
couple.
Okay.
And this is from a poem called Tragedy Becomes Comedy. A director once told me comedy is tragedy on fast forward. He also said comedy is a serious business. Just so you know, the whole book isn't doom and gloom.
Yeah, we have to come back to hope. We always do.
We need to laugh, right? We need to laugh, or how would we survive life? Okay, so this is just an excerpt from that poem. If you don't laugh, you'd cry. Every week on Susie's futon, you end the session by gathering up all your pedo enemies. You put them in a two-tone 1970s Volkswagen van and throw them off a cliff on the Ventura Highway. The clatter, smash up, and gasoline explosion are so deeply satisfying. You do it twice more. You and Susie do this every week for closure, while Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, looks on. Before I go, I'd just like to indulge in a little target practice with their heads. If you must know, they split like pumpkins. Everywhere. You stage multiple incarcerations, torture and arrest. They plead and beg. Who is the scared little girl now?
Mm.
There you go. You
That
can
had to
always
be
have
fun writing.
imaginary revenge.
That is about getting rid. Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna get it out of our bodies. We're going to, let the body let it go and shake it off, as Taylor Swift would say. So we shake it out of us. So in closing, I would like to
Mhm.
ask you this question. I'm just going to read it to you. What are you still discovering about your own story, even after all of this work? And you can define what work means. Work could be your healing, work can be your writing, work can just be you as a human being. What are you still discovering about your own story, even after all of this work?
That the story is always evolving and changing, that we see it differently depending on where we stand. It's like Einstein,
Mm-hmm.
right? The theory of relativity. Yeah, I find now I'm working on a project about women in the war, and now I'm more interested in other people's stories
Yeah.
because I told my own story, so I'm interested in other people's stories, and I think my perspective at this age, at this time in my own healing, at this point in my life, is different than it was, and that's a good thing to remember too. That too is evolving. I can't remember where I heard this, but the other day someone said everything is evolving. Even our concept of God is evolving. I thought, of
Mm-hmm.
course, of course. Why
Mm-hmm.
would we think everything's static? I think when we try to make things static is when we get into trouble sometimes. But
Yeah,
that's that's really interesting. I'll have to really I'm going to think about that for a long time. How has that story changed? I don't
absolutely.
I used to, when I had setbacks, and everyone has setbacks in life, rejections, things don't go through, I would immediately go back into the old story, of feeling doomed or feeling bad or feeling wrong in some kind of way. And now I don't get caught in that the way I used to. I know to kind of switch myself out of it and immediately go to, what is the solution? This door is just closed. What window is opening? And look there. And that's a different way of being than I wasn't capable of that a long
Mm-hmm.
time. I just wasn't. And we all get stuck for periods of time, but yeah, so that story has changed. The story I tell myself about myself has changed.
Yes. And then the universe responds and it gives us the light and it gives us inroads, like you turn into poetry. And look at you. And look at you winning all of these awards for the weeping degree. My goodness. And being recognized for that and for the poignant narratives that you are describing. And I think it is important to tell people's stories. Why do you think it's important to tell people's stories? You mentioned that in your remarks, so that made me think of one more question. Why is it important now to tell other people's stories?
Well, they've even done studies, haven't they, where they've proven that people who read have greater empathy, that we learn to have empathy
Mhm.
for other people and people different from ourselves by reading stories because we connect to their humanity. And I think that's how we learn and how we grow on so many levels, emotionally, spiritually, and in so many ways. So I'm concerned when reading disappears because I think it creates such a private, sacred space for people to connect with another human being. So yeah, I feel
Absolutely.
about that. Yeah.
And you become a light for somebody else.
Yeah.
Even in fact that you're being a guest on this show, because somewhere, somehow, I want to say on social media, I read something that you wrote and I was mesmerized by it and just wanted to have this conversation with you. So writing, reading, it's a connector. It bridges gaps and it pulls us in together to see our humanity. How do people get in touch with you? What's your website? Where can we go
Thank
find
you.
out?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a website, www.kellywatt.ca. And I invite people to sign up for my newsletter. I don't abuse their trust and send a
Mhm.
gazillion messages, but I do post where I'm going to be teaching Finding Your Epiphany, my little Flash Prose course. And I'm also on Instagram at Kelly Watt Author. And so you can follow me there, which I would be very happy if people would do that. And I was going to say something to your point, Anne Marie. The other day, this is an advertisement in Canada for a telecommunications company, but it's so true. Their logo was communication, connection is everything.
Yes,
But it's true. Oh my
it's
gosh.
true.
Yeah, we spend all our time connecting in all these different ways because what we want, or communicating, because what we want to do is connect. We just want to connect. Yeah,
We
it
just
makes us
want to connect, and people, and as a advertising, people buy from the connection, from relationship, not the product. You buy because you made a connection to something. So it
so
is true.
true.
There's truth in that. So
Yeah.
Kelly Watt, thank you, thank you, thank you for being my guest today on About This Life, where we are changing our lives one day at a time. Take care, everybody.